and welcome to the Par 3 here on thelines.com. Matt Brown, Stephen Andress coming to you. This is the Valero Texas Open edition, the warm-up tournament here for the Masters. Stephen, when we take a look, I think it is worth noting as we head into this tournament that we do not know 100% the motivation behind some of these players. Now, some of these players are not in the Masters field, so we understand their motivation for sure because this is the last ticket that could get punched to go play at Augusta. However, some of the guys that we know are already going to be over there, look, in years past, we've seen Corey Connors has gone out and he has played well in this tournament. And you know, even when he's been in the field like last year, whatever, but there was other times where, you know, a guy like Rory McIlroy's in the field this year. Is Rory going to play 4 rounds in this tournament? Or is Rory going to like, hey man, I really got to dial in my wedges before I get to Augusta, or hey man, I really got to whatever. And like, I'd rather do it in a competitive environment than just out on the range. So we do at least have to take a little bit of that into account, in my personal opinion, as to what some of these guys might be thinking as they head into this tournament.
Yeah, Rory specifically doesn't have a top 10 this year, which is like crazy to think. He's in his own tier at the top of the odds board. If I was him, I'd much rather get to Augusta on Saturday or Sunday than Monday or Tuesday to get the extra time. But at the same time, he's probably trying to figure out his game a little bit with the wedges and the iron. So yeah, it's tricky. It's definitely tricky for sure. So I think you got to just stick to process here as opposed to narratives and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, while we're at it, let's go ahead. You're on the box.
All right. Number 1 for me, I did kind of hover towards the top of the board here. Not the very top, but Hideki Matsuyama for me, whether I was looking at last 50 rounds, last 36 rounds, last 24 rounds, was top 2 in the modeling service I use and all the stats that I put in. He has been so consistent this year, coming off the injury last year. Really started at the WM Phoenix Open where he was 22nd, followed that up with a win at the Genesis, top 12 at the Arnold Palmer where his lack of distance off the tee should have hurt him. It really didn't. And then just phenomenal ball striking at the Players. Couldn't putt, finished 6th, but gained 14.2 strokes tee to green in that event. So this is a course where ball striking is rewarded. There's smaller greens. He's one of the best chippers in this field as well if you look at around the green stats. I just think this is one of the better all-around players in this field, and he was my first click this week, Matt, at 18-1. You can now find him, 21-1. You can get a profit boost, get him up to 25-1 at our partner Bet365 if you want.
Yep, we are looking at about the same here when we're going to Decky. So he was either first or second in all of the versions of the models that I ran this week. And, one of the reasons why I think for me is I put pretty heavy emphasis on the par 5s. This even though they are the toughest set of par 5s on the PGA Tour, it is where the majority of the scoring still happens here at this tournament. Like, this is a tough course. I know a lot of people are going to look at TPC courses and they kind of roll their eyes, but I mean, this course is not easy. And so, the fact that Hideki has, if he can't get there in 2, he is so incredibly good from that kind of like 100 to 125, like 75 to 125 bucket from approaches, where I can see him putting it close to be able to get a really, really good look at birdie on those par 5s as well, which again, I emphasized heavily this week. So I totally get that on Hideki. Fast forward to next week. I might be just waiting to play him next week. So
I already have played him next week. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, so might be waiting to play him next week. So when I said he was number 1 or number 2 in every version of the model this week, Steven, well, you want to know why? Because the other guy that was the other guy that was 1 whenever it wasn't Decky was Alex Noren. Alex Noren is first or second every version of the model that I ran. And if you go in and you just filter in the 2024 calendar year and you go by strokes gained and things like that, the number 1 player in the world in strokes gained total for the 2024 season. I mean, listen, I get it, the fall swing and all this like that, but once the calendar year turned, is Alex Noren. And you go in and he's 17th tee to green, 24th off the tee, 39th on approach, 25th in ball striking, 46th around the green, 39th putting, 26th in short game. He's just doing everything well right now. And so for me, you get a price. I understand not the greatest that you look. I mean, I got 33 to 1. There's still a 33 out there available. Most of these places, I think Alex Noren's become a popular bet, are down in kind of the 28 range on him now. But I do kind of, I know you said you're not really buying into the narratives. I actually kind of have looked in some of these guys at the top, and I'm not going to say necessarily written them off, Steven, but like, I just don't think Rory and Jordan and, Homa and Fitzpatrick and all these guys, and like Morikawa specifically, who's been struggling so much, I think these guys are out there to work on some of their stuff. Like, I think these dudes are out there to like really hone in on things that have been bothering them, and that's why they're playing in this. They chose this tournament specifically where it's a little bit more difficult of a course, where there is some conditions which somewhat could mimic what you're going to see at Augusta. This is at least a tree-lined course and all the, different things like that. So I actually looked a little bit further down, started with Alex Noren, who again just blew up every single thing in my model. I mean, like, seriously, first or second in every single version. You're going to have to scramble on this course, those small greens, like you mentioned. It's going to be tough. It's going to be firm. It's going to be fast. He's number one in this field in scrambling over the last 24 rounds. He's number one in bogey avoidance. He is number 3 in par 5 scoring average, which I thought was pretty crazy. I would never have thought that from Alex Noren. Like I said, I weighed that fairly heavily as well, and he's a good driver of the ball. So for me, Alex Noren coming in 33 to 1.
This warrants a follow-up question for me before I get to my second pick, because Matt, I have had an agonizing month. I've had 2 tournaments in the past month where my outrights have finished in second place. Another guy who peaked in the model for me last week was Steven Yeager, and I chose not to bet him because I was obsessed with trying to beat Scotty Scheffler with another big name, and it bit me in the bottom. If there was a Steven Yeager this week in my modeling, it would be Alex Noren, and a guy that I didn't bet because his odds seem criminal to me when you look at where his odds are at and some of the big names that are on the board around him. But he was top 5 over the last 36 rounds for me as well. He's never won on the PGA Tour, but he finished second in Bermuda in November, third at the Shriners in October. He's got 3 straight top 20s going from the Honda, the Players, and the Houston Open. So he's certainly trending, but he's never won. So how did you rationalize betting him, given that you and I both always have in the back of our mind win equity?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, you also look at the tournament history here. Like, we've had some bombs win at this. Like we've had some absolute bombs win at this tournament. And now this field is much stronger than it has been in years past. And like I said, this being kind of the warm-up for the Masters, and with the way that the scheduling worked out with the elevated events and all that, like, we got a much stronger field for this event this year than we've had in years past. So I do think that hurts just a little bit. But like I said, I actually did buy into the narrative a little bit that some of these guys at the top that are, kind of the been there, done that guys, I think that those been there, done that guys are here to work on their game as opposed to walk away with a win in the Valero Texas Open. I think that is more important to them to go to the Masters feeling good about whatever was ailing them, as opposed to really coming out of this thing on top. Where a guy like Alex Noren, like you said, he's never won. This guy's as hungry as anything to go ahead and capture that first title. Now, he would love for it to be, sure. Would he love for it to be at Augusta? Yeah, I mean, any of these guys would love for it to be.
And in your defense, Matt, if he's in contention on Sunday and has like a risk-reward situation, he's going for it, because second place doesn't get him into the Masters.
Yeah, so it's, there's motivational angles and things like that as well. So, and plus, just for me, it's very tough for me to ignore. Like, I will ignore my model to an extent. It's very tough for me to ignore when I run models on 3 different sites with 3 different algorithms with 3 different data sets that in there, and he's literally 1 or 2 in all 3 of them, right? And so, like, to me, it's kind of tough for me to ignore, and I think that I would be foolish if I did so.
He will be absolutely the name I regret most if he wins this tournament this week. I will give you that. That is for sure. I ran another model on Data Golf, and he wound up 4th. So yeah. I get it. I just couldn't pull the trigger, and it's because there's another guy in this range of odds that I did pull the trigger on.
All right.
And it's Matt Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
And I know we talked about process over results here and not being too much about narratives, but there is something in particular here that made me stray away from the modeling. Matt Fitzpatrick is not peaking in people's models right now, but I think there's a reasonable explanation for that. He came out and explained that he went months and months without him or his team realizing that there was an added weight on his driver, and they couldn't figure out why he was not a consistent ball striker off the tee, despite all the work he put in, despite the success he had in winning the U.S. Open with his long straight driver. They finally took the weight off, and now he's much, much better. And I'm willing to play that narrative because if you combine that with just logic and reason that Matt Fitzpatrick is a very talented golfer. At 30-1, I'll take him in this week's case over a guy like Alex Noren, who's 35-1. Because just use your common sense. Matt Fitzpatrick is a lot better golfer than what the models are telling us right now. And it seems like this might be a reasonable explanation as to what happened with him. Because now that he's straightened it out, he's been much more consistent. And he just came off a finish at the Players' Championship where his tee to green numbers were very strong, 5.8 tee to green. He's a pretty consistent putter, gaining strokes putting in 4 of his last 5 events. So I think long and straight is a very valuable weapon at this course in particular. And it seems like he's finally figured out the driver. So there are times where I will ignore the model, just look at the odds on the board. And if I can get 30-1 on Fitzpatrick versus 25-1 on Homa, who can't seem to figure out his driver, versus 30-1 on Collin Morikawa, who all of a sudden can't hit an iron. And if he can't hit an iron, he sure as hell can't putt well enough or hit the ball far enough off the tee to make up for that. So it's just, he's at a sweet spot for me on the board where I couldn't ignore it. And it seems like he's figured out whatever was hurting his ball striking in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get there with Fitzpatrick, and mainly it's because I'm not so much worried about the driver thing. It's the approach game. And like for me, he's played 8 tournaments in 2024. He's lost on approach in 6 of the 8. And if you look at the buckets that I really like this week, again, those shorter kind of buckets where we're going to have these guys that are going to need to capitalize on, I think, those par 5s. From 75 to 100 yards, he's 109th he's 105th in the field. From 100 to 125, he's 120th in the field. And then from 125 to 150, he's 123rd in the field on approach in the calendar year 2024. And so I just can't get there with Fitz. I can understand if you just want to bet on talent and pedigree, because as we know, the guy has the talent and has the pedigree. I just think his form is really, really off right now. And so I'm going to pass. I'm going to have to see it first, I think, before I can go there. My second one is Christian Bezuidenhout. And if you look, you can find him kind of somewhere in that 50, 45-ish range with Christian Bezuidenhout. And like I said, Steven, I looked, and pretty surprising to me. You narrow things down to 2024, and you just look at what has happened so far in 2024. Who is coming in, playing some really good golf since the calendar year turned? Behind Alex Noren, the second in this entire field in strokes gained total is Christian Bezuidenhout, and that is over guys like Ludwig Aberg, who we know has been absolutely phenomenal with everything, Hideki, all these other bigger name dudes. And you go, and if it wasn't for Bezuidenhout being so bad off the tee, he would probably be number 1 with a bullet, because he's actually really, really high in several different categories out there, most notably 3rd overall in strokes gained approach, which I really, really value here at this course. You're going to need to be able to come in high. You're going to need to be able to come in and keep it on these greens. And when you do that, you got to be able to putt it in the hole. And he's 5th overall in this field in 2024 in strokes gained putting as well. This might be the first time I've ever bet Bezuidenhout, actually. I don't know if I ever have before, but then I ran the models and all of that, and he comes in, he's 6th in one, he is 5th in another, and then he is 10th in the other one. And so for me, to go along with all the numbers that we've seen so far with this, and then the odds again that are attached, like he's pretty far-ish down the board here, and in a course where, listen, if you're not spraying the driver the rough is not all that penal here. So it's like if you're not spraying it, if you spray it, things can get horrible. But if you're
just stay out of the trees, right?
Yeah, like if you're just missing the fairways, it's not all that bad. But so as long as he can not spray the driver, I think we have a chance here. So Christian Bezuidenhout there at about 50-ish to 1.
I can't blame you. I mean, he's got 3 top 10s this season, I believe. And when I'm looking to bet some of these guys that are deeper down the odds board, some long shots, I really want to see guys trending. Like recent form matters more to me to some of these fringe long shots than it does for some of the bigger names on tour who I believe can maybe just turn it on, tweak something and figure it out with their pedigree. So along those lines, my big long shot, one of many actually, but the one we'll talk about on this show is Andrew Novak, because over the past 24 rounds, he's ranking top 5 for me. And he's consistently top 15 on approach, around the green, tee to green, obviously, bogey avoidance, and he's top 25 scoring on par 5s as well. The only area where he's not lighting up green for me is driving distance, which I can forgive because he's top 30 in good drives gained. So he's finding the green in regulation even when he misses the fairway at an above average rate in this field. So if we look at his recent results since the WM Phoenix Open, he had a run of 3 straight top 10s. Not great last week in Houston, did make the cut, but the week before that, a top 20 at the Valspar, where he gained 5.1 strokes on approach. So I've bet a lot of long shots this week. If you want to see the rest, you can go to the lines.com free Discord channel. Just click on the icon in the top right-hand corner of the homepage. But this is one of the names where I think, ball striking and specifically his iron play has been good enough since February where I wanted to have him on the card this week.
23rd this field in scrambling, 24th around the green, 9th in sand saves, and kind of shockingly, again, a guy that you wouldn't think whenever you're talking about, because he's, again, not all that long, but 34th in par 5 average scoring. So, I mean, listen, he's in the upper third of this field in par 5 scoring, and then also 18th in bogey avoidance too. So if we're looking, in what we expect to be relatively tough scoring conditions, so long as the wind blows, which it typically does over there at this tournament most years, then we need guys not going out there and putting up squiggly numbers. And so he's good in bogey avoidance as well. I played him in a different route. I played him in first round leader because this guy can go light it up, and we've seen him go light it up before. That's not to say I might not have something on him, from an outright perspective or even just a placement market perspective. Maybe I can bet on kind of the 95th percentile as opposed to the 100th percentile and play a top 5 on him or something, or a top 10 or something like that. So probably will have additional exposure to Novak as well. My final one is a guy that, again, like sometimes models tell me things and I have to go in and dig and look around, and it's Bud Cauley. And Stephen, Bud Cauley in one of the models, like I said, so I use 3 different sites. I don't build models, but I use 3 different sites that have models, and then I put in my data. But these are all different algorithms that are built by these other people. In one of them out there, Bud Cauley was 3rd overall in the model. Bud Cauley was 3rd overall in the model. And you go in and you start to look, and it's probably because I really dug into, I really like good drives. I want guys to not be spraying it. If you can keep it out of the woods, you're fine. It's just, it's those guys that occasionally just go crazy off the tee. Bud Cauley, 15th overall in this field. You go in, hey, I really want those dudes that even if they can't get there in 2, can they get there close on these par 5s? 75 to 100 approach, which is where it's likely to be that range if you're not going to try to go for it. Into Bud Cauley's number 1 overall in this field from that range on approach. He's 7th in scrambling. He's 8th in sand saves, 20th in par 5 average, and 3rd overall in bogey avoidance. And so all that adds up to me is like a guy that I don't know what his win equity is, but you're getting plus money on a top 40. You're getting big plus money on a top 20. And if you want to sprinkle on on an outright, we have seen bombs win here before. So, hey, look, if you want to sprinkle on an outright, that's perfectly fine. But I kind of like what I'm seeing here from a player profile of a dude that can probably go out, make this cut, and maybe wiggle his way up into the top 20.
Cauley on my outright card as well. If you look at his profile, he basically can do everything but putt. He's been a terrible putter, but these are below average green size for the tour. So not as many lag putts, not as many long putts. And we just saw a guy last week who won on tour, who's 73rd on tour in strokes gained putting. Putting is the stat that has a lot of variance. Ball striking is where you want to spend most of your time. Don't blame you one bit. I got the outright as well, bud.
I like it. No pun intended there on Bud. No pun intended. So, guys, again, as Steven mentioned, go to lines.com, upper right-hand corner, and you will see the Discord button. You can join for absolutely free, and you can go in and see everybody's full card. As we continue to add to anything we add, we'll throw into the Discord between now and the time that this thing tees off. And then also, if you want to get the full breakdown of everything, you got to read John's article over there. It'll give you a top to bottom look at this course and everything about the course history and what type of player has performed well here in the past as well. Of course, we have the Masters coming up. We'll be doing tons of stuff around the Masters for everything. And then if you haven't done so already, everything we do is free. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We do appreciate you guys giving us some support here. For Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your Valero bets.